In this lesson, we'll use a lattice modifier to start the coffee table. Alright, so we're going to build this kind of coffee table. It's kind of a framework look here, and we'll build that right in here, of course. So let's go ahead and start this by dropping in a box primitive. So we'll go to Create, Geometry, Standard Primitives, Box, and I'll just go ahead and drag one out and pull that up, and then we'll play with the parameters there in the Modify panel to get this the way that we want it. Alright, so let's go ahead and make this about 6 feet wide here. Make it about 6 feet or so. And let's make it about 4 feet long. So we'll add maybe another inch to that, what we had there. Make that about, and we can make that about 2 feet tall, I think. I think that's probably fine. Maybe even a little bit less. Let's go ahead and dial that down. And the height's not quite as important here. So we'll dial down the height. Now I'm going to go ahead and, it's important to get the correct number of divisions for the way that we're going to be building this. So what we want to have is, we want to have one line across here, which is right. And we want to have, we only want to have one division across this way. So that's the length. Go ahead and dial that down. Alright. And rather than having two of these divisions in here, we only want to have one. Okay, so I'll actually dial that one down. So this is the sort of framework that we want. So you can see I've got length 1, width 2, height 2. It's about 6 feet by 4 feet by about, I've got about a foot, 1 foot 9 inches or so. The height, like I said, is not quite as important. But so when you look at this, think of all of the edges like geometry. So think of tubes there, and that'll give you an idea of the kind of framework that we're trying to create. So to do this, we're going to simply add a modifier. So we'll go to the modifier list, and there's something here called lattice. And just looking at this, if you're just picking up 3ds Max, you may have a different idea of what this modifier will actually do. And so let's go ahead and activate this, and you can see that this actually creates a kind of lattice work using the edges of our geometry. So if we go down here to the parameters, we can see that we have an option for applying it to the entire object, or you can actually apply it to a selection of sub-objects. So we've got it applied to the entire object. We can choose to show only the joints, which occur at the vertices. We can show only the struts, which occur at the edges, or we can show both. Okay, and we can also change the geometry or the parameters of that geometry that occurs at the struts and the joints. So for the struts, we can change the size, so we can dial those down a bit. We can change the number of segments along the length. Okay, we can also change the number of sides. So if we want something that's a bit more round, we can raise the number of sides that we've got there. Dial that radius down maybe a bit. Okay, we can also give it a different material ID. Okay, depending on what we want to use it for. Okay, we can also cap the ends, turn on smooth to make that appear a little bit smoother. We can also change the base type of the joints. Okay, so you can see how that affects the look of those. And we can up the number of segments here, make that nice and smooth, dial that radius down quite a bit. Okay, and right now our radius is about 16, that's about half an inch, looks like. So our joint type we want to make maybe just a slightly larger than that. Okay, and maybe we can raise that up. Let's go ahead and make that right there at that. So you don't have a big bulging sort of joint there. So that will give you kind of a nice little framework to begin with, right? So let's go ahead and now we want to start to modify this a little bit. Now, one of the cool things is you've got the ability here now, since we've got our show end result, we're utilizing the modifier stack here. We can actually change the settings, and you can see how that follows along. Okay, want that to be 4 feet. If you wanted to change the number of segments, you could do that. You can see how that geometry is simply added very quickly. So you really have the opportunity to see what you're getting and change those parameters depending on what you actually need. All right, so Now at this point, let's go ahead and collapse this stack. Now that we've got this kind of set the way that we want to, let's go ahead and collapse this, and that'll give us an opportunity to do a little bit more editing. Okay, and I'll go ahead and convert this to an editable poly. And now there are a few of these elements, and these are all separate elements, so I can select all the different rails as well as, or the struts rather, as well as the joints. And so there are some of these that we don't need to actually create our coffee table. We don't need this one down here, so I'm going to delete this. And we don't need this one, or this one, or this one. Okay, so I can delete basically all of these. Okay, and you can kind of see which ones I'm leaving there. We can go ahead and get rid of these. And this is for obviously the coffee table that I'm making. If you want to experiment a little and have some fun, that's perfectly fine. And let's also go ahead and get rid of these top ones. Okay, so what we're left with is a framework like that. Now I'm going to take this one and actually move it down. Okay. So let's go ahead and just move this down here, kind of maybe halfway between there. And we'll do the same thing down here. We'll kind of move this one down about halfway or so. Okay, and that gives us this sort of a look. Now I'm also going to go in and get rid of the joints up here by selecting the different elements. Okay, something like that. And get rid of all of those joints, right? Just at the top there. And you could do that on the bottom too if you wanted to. Although it's kind of in the floor, that's fine. Alright, so that gives us kind of our framework that we want to work with, right? So let's go ahead now and create kind of the top part of our coffee table here. So I'm going to go to the top view. Okay, and I want to create just a box. Okay, so I'll just create a box. Okay. And I'll give it just a little bit of a height. And now this box is going to be kind of the surface of our coffee table. So I'm going to go ahead and move this, move it kind of up here. All right. And now we want the center of this to be located right on that point there that we've got. All right, let's go into our modify panel here. And let's give this a square size. So the length, maybe we'll make that 2.5 feet. Okay, and we'll do the same thing over here. Just go ahead and enter that. And then we can change up the height later on if we want to. But let's go ahead and now duplicate this across. Just temporarily, give it a little bit of space there. Okay. And we'll go ahead and make that a copy. And let's also do this over in this way. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Okay. And down. And I'm just trying to kind of make a template of where I want these to be. Because now we can come in and actually move this around so that it matches up a little bit better. So we can go and grab the vertices and actually pull those in so they match up a little bit better. Okay, we can pull these over because this is where we want that to be at the center of these guys. Okay, and we also want these to kind of be at the middle. So we'll drag that down, match that up, and let's go ahead and pull this down a little bit too. So now it kind of matches up with the centers of those pieces there. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and break this off and then come in the next lesson and finish up working on the surface of our coffee table and just finish that up. So we'll go ahead and continue that in the next lesson.